You're welcome to today's special interview right here on GHOne TV. I am Natalie Fort, and I sit with His Excellency Roey Gilad, the Ambassador Designate of the State of Israel to Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. With over 30 years of diplomatic experience and a distinguished career spanning multiple continents, Ambassador Gilad brings a wealth of knowledge on international relations as well as foreign policy. Well, today we'll engage him in a thought-provoking conversation on Israel's relations with Ghana and the sub-region, the complexities of the Middle East conflict, economic cooperation, and Ghana's upcoming elections. Ambassador Roey Gilad, you are welcome to GH1.
Thank you for the invitation, Natalie. I'm extremely happy to be here.
It's very good to have you. I know you have recently...
Meanwhile, maybe at the end of the interview I will not be so happy, but meanwhile
Probably,
I'm very happy.
But to start off, you're happy, which is a good start.
Thank you.
You've recently had your appointment here, right? How has it been so far? Generally, how do you find
Well,
Ghana?
I just came over like 2 months ago, and
Right.
I found the Ghanaian people to be extremely warm
Right.
and welcoming, and so far it's been great.
Wonderful. We're glad to have you. Now, let's start off our conversation with geopolitics and international relations. You've recently taken over, specifically from Ambassador Shlomit Sufa. She was the previous ambassador to Ghana. How would you say that Israel views the current affairs and relations with Ghana, and how are you hoping to strengthen it?
So it's an interesting question because since my arrival, I was invited to so many, mainly churches, that the followers, the people, the simple people, if you wish, quote unquote, are full with sympathy and love towards Israel. They are praying for the sake of Jerusalem and for the sake of Israel and Zion. So on the popular level, there is a huge support for Israel, which obviously makes me very happy. As for the administration, the government, my feeling is that this popular support is not always being reflected in a way that I would like it to be reflected.
Right.
There was a very important vote in the UN General Assembly like a month ago, in which Jerusalem was in a way disappointed by the way Ghana voted, though we brought it to the attention of the people here that this is a very important vote for us. And my feeling sometimes is that the current administration is looking often at Addis Ababa, the AU, to see what is the common African voice, rather than looking to the streets of Accra and listening to the popular support of Israel.
Interesting. Now, I'm going to touch a bit more on when you say that you are not too... You feel like it could be better in terms of that level of support. Yes, you've engaged with Ghanaians at the ground level in churches, various religious institutions, and you see that support on the ground, but you would hope that it could be increased or it could be better demonstrated.
Indeed, I hope that it will be reflected in a better way by the people here who makes the decisions on the foreign affairs, the policy, exactly.
Right. Specifically, what would that a better relationship on a more global and international front would look like to you?
I think a better understanding by the people who sets the agenda here of the very complicated geopolitical challenges that Israel is facing in the north, in the south. You know, to some extent, it's not very far from the situations that many African states, including Ghana, are facing. You have some challenges in your northern border with Burkina Faso, but Ghana is a huge state. Israel is a very small state.
It is.
And what we lack is what is known by professionals as geopolitical depths. That is to say, or strategic depths. That is to say that since Israel is such a small state, that every mistake that we will make might be our last mistake. There is no room to amend. Again, the distance between Accra and your border with Burkina Faso is huge. But the difference or the distance between Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, and our border with Gaza or the border with Lebanon is so small that indeed every mistake that we'll make will be a crucial one. And actually, I don't want to intimidate anybody, but there isn't a square mile, a square kilometer in Israel which is not covered currently by missiles coming either from Lebanon or from Gaza, or unfortunately coming from Iran, as we saw twice lately. So those are the, I would say, the strategic challenges that Israel is facing, and not always I feel that it is understood in the right way by
slightly misunderstood?
I think that I said it in a clear way. We are facing a unique situation that I don't know any other state in the world which is facing such a complicated geopolitical situation. And I have a feeling that not always I manage to bring it in a clear way to the desks of the people who set the agenda here. That, again, all too often, look, Natalie, that has to be said. Israel and Ghana enjoys very good relationship since 1957. That has to be said. We established our independence in 1948. You established your independence in 1957. Bilateral relationships have been great since then. I'm mainly talking about the way Ghana vote in international arena, in the UN, in New York, in Geneva, Human Rights Council. My feeling that it can be better. I mean, obviously it can be worse. This is not like some other African states that I will not mention here. But I believe that this friendship and this support among the popular level here in Ghana can be reflected in a better way by the way Ghana votes at the international arena. I'm mainly talking about the international arena.
You're talking about the international arena. You're talking about the policymakers.
Indeed.
And if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the strength of relations that we have between Ghana and Israel could be better depicted on those international platforms.
I say clearly that the bilateral relationships are excellent. We have very good bilateral relationship with Ghana since 1957. However, it doesn't reflect in a good way on the multilateral level.
Why do you think that's the case?
I think, look, in the last resolution or the last vote at the UN that I spoke about, there were 7 significant African countries, African states that abstained. That's what we asked Ghana to do, to abstain. So we had Kenya abstain, we had Ethiopia, we had South Sudan, we had Zambia, we had Rwanda, we had Cameroon, and we had the RDC. 7 strong African states abstained. Ghana decided to vote in a different way, which was in line with what I think the AU, the African Union in Addis have, so to speak, instructed the members, and we were disappointed.
Do you want Ghana's sense of loyalty to be stronger to Israel as opposed to the African Union?
I'm not talking about loyalty. I'm talking about understanding a very special needs or very special, complicated geopolitical situation of a state which is second to none in its support for Ghana since 1957, which has very solid and strong and stable bilateral relationship. And in this case, we felt that Ghana could abstain, which make it, by the way, one African country, which is Malawi, supported Israel in this resolution. We didn't think that Ghana should go that far, but if states like Kenya, Ethiopia, and all the 7 that I mentioned, Cameroon, which is just your neighbor, abstained, we thought that Ghana, bearing in mind all the strong relationship and the significant bilateral relationship we have, could have abstained as well. We were disappointed.
You were disappointed. You
Indeed.
state that clearly. You were disappointed
Yes, we
with
were.
Ghana's voting.
Jerusalem was disappointed.
Jerusalem was disappointed.
Yeah, I got many calls from Jerusalem,
Yes.
asking me what went wrong. And you know, I'm quite new here. I'm still
You are.
learning the terrain.
Right.
You know,
There was not much you could say as per what went wrong.
I said, let me try to understand what was behind it. And we have a good dialogue with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here and the administration who sets the agenda on foreign affairs. The answers I got were not satisfying as from our point of view, but I really want to move on and to hope this was one incident in which that is not going to reflect the future, I would say, policy of Ghana in international relations, in multilateral arenas. I have to say that after the terrible massacre of the 7th of October 23, we got a strong support from the Ghanaian government. I think there is some erosion since then, but at the end of the day, I believe this is what we call in diplomatic language a hiccup, not something which is very significant. And I really hope that in my 3 years here to come, we shall manage to bring back Ghanaian policy in multilateral organizations to the place it should be.
Interesting. Now, you brought me to this a lot faster than I was intending on, but
Sorry
let's get to that's okay.
Israelis will like to go directly to business.
Go directly straight to business. That's perfect. Now, let's get into regional conflicts, right? And you said that Israel is in a very crucial time. Yes, it's a small state, but it's a very significant state historically. Now, on October 7, 2023, we had Hamas and several other Palestinian nationalist militant groups launched a coordinated arms incursion on the Gaza Strip, on the Gaza envelope of southern Israel, right? And this was the first invasion of Israeli territory since the year 1948, okay? And since a war, that was the Arab-Israeli war. This attack coincided with a Jewish religious holiday. You could help me with it. It's Shimtat Torah.
Simchat Torah.
Okay. And it was devastating, right? And of course, Israel responded, retaliated. And globally, we all know where we are at currently as a result of this retaliation. What's your take on the state, the devastating state of this war as it stands?
My take is that Israel made many mistakes, tactical mistakes and strategic mistakes. As for the tactical mistakes, the mistakes done by the army, the fact that we were taken by such a huge surprise that at the end of the day, 1,200 Israelis were murdered and 251 were hijacked, taken into captivity into Gaza. That's a huge fiasco that should not happen. And in the day after, we are going to investigate it in a thorough, serious way. And he or she who needs to pay the price will pay the price. Strategically, the mistakes that we did was that we turned a blind eye from a terror organization just next to our border, just a few hundred yards from our civil population, civil communities on the other side of the border. A terror organization that states very clearly in its charter that there is no room for a sovereign Jewish state in the Middle East, for they believe that the Middle East is the Muslim waqf, that is to say a Muslim endowment. And Jews can live there, but only as citizens in a Muslim state. We have established our sovereign state in 1948. We have no intention to go anywhere, and yet we turned a blind eye. That will not happen again. Since the 7th of October, we are adamant to put an end to the control of these terrorists, of Gaza Strip. In Gaza Strip, there are 2 million people, and we assume that there were 40,000 terrorists. We are adamant of putting an end to their control of Gaza, And we are looking forward for new Palestinians, or I would say decent Palestinians who would like to live next to Israel and not instead of Israel to control Gaza.
You said you're looking forward to decent Palestinians?
I said we believe, and I personally believe, I know Palestinian, I speak Arabic, I lived 4 years in Jordan, which has a very strong Palestinian presence. I believe that most Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank would like to live next to Israel. I would say sovereign entity next to sovereign entity. One entity, Israel, is already there. The other one will have to be demilitarized and de-radicalized. But I really believe that most Palestinians are willing to live next to Israel. There are few who would like to live instead of Israel, would like to get rid of the Zionist, of the Jewish sovereign state. With those people, we thought we can live next to them and turn a blind eye. It will not work anymore. However, there are many decent Palestinians who would like to live next to Israel, and I believe they need to control the West Bank and Gaza Strip. So I believe the day after is possible, provided we get rid of the terrorists.
Now, let's talk about how the international community is holding Israel accountable with regards to this war. Now, the UN is quite critical to Israel because it was a country that was founded by UN Charter in 1948. But it appears as though Israel is not cooperating much with the UN with respect to this war. Why is that the case?
So, first of all, Natalie, let's face it, in 1948, what is known as Resolution 181, actually the UN decided to establish two states, a Jewish state and a Palestinian state. They said an Arabic state, never mind. The idea was to establish two states, one next to the other. The Jews have accepted it. They were not happy with the borders, but they said, okay, this is what we got, this is what we'll take. The Arabs actually refused. And the day after the Brits have left at the time this area on the 14th of May 1948. The UN partition resolution was adopted on the 29th of November 47. After 6 months, the Brits left and left us together with the Palestinians. We were about to accept this partition resolution, but the following day, Israel was facing 5 Arab armies, the Lebanese one, the Syrian one, the Jordanian one, the Egyptian one, and also the Iraqi one, and also the Palestinians. And all of them tried to bring an end to this very young Jewish sovereign state. We managed to win the war. After the war and even before, there were few times where Palestinians were offered a Palestinian state. They always refused. I will not give here a too long history lesson. Again, we are still would welcome a Palestinian authority who will be willing to live next to Israel. Obviously, now the situation is very tensed. This Palestinian Authority will need to be demilitarized and de-radicalized. But I do believe that a peaceful future between Palestinians and Israel is possible.
You believe it's possible with the scale of the war as it stands?
By all means. I must tell you that currently most Israelis, if you'll ask them, will tell you, we don't want to hear about it. We've been betrayed. The same people who came and butchered our people on 7th of October 23, many of them used to work in the Jewish communities, in the Israeli communities on the other side of the border. And then they came and they butchered the people they used to work for them. Look, Natalie, the situation now is extremely sensitive in Israel. People are nervous, people are not happy. We are now engaged in another campaign in the north. But I'm talking strategically about the long run, about the day after. We believe that, I would say, a political solution is possible between us and the Palestinians, provided we shall put an end to the Hamas control of Gaza. currently, we still have 101 people that are under captivity, Hamas captivity in Gaza. This is why I have this ribbon, the yellow ribbon. Every Israeli, most Israelis wear this yellow ribbon nowadays. We have 101 people there, and when I say we have, I'm not sure that all of them are with us. I don't think I would survive a whole year in a dungeon, in a tunnel, with very little oxygen, with no light, with huge humidity. So I don't know how many of them are still alive, but we want to get all of them back, dead or alive. And then we shall continue talking. Till then, we have nothing to say.
Now let's talk about press freedom and media professionals who have been working in Israel throughout this period. There have been quite a large number of journalists that have been killed. 134 journalists specifically have lost their lives. Now, these include 2 Israelis, though, but most of them are Palestinian journalists, and international news networks. Some have also been banned from operating in Israel. Israel prides itself as well as being rather democratic. Why do we then see that the media and press freedom, which is a strong part of democracy, is not being nurtured in this time of the war within Israel?
Actually, I think the opposite is true. You know, Gaza Strip is 60 kilometers by 4 kilometers, so it's around 240 square kilometers. You have nearly 2 million people living there, and this is the most congested area in the world. Now, conducting a war in such an area has a very significant price, obviously for the Palestinians, but also for us. We lost hundreds of soldiers there since the beginning of the war. Obviously, as you know, being a journalist, especially covering a war zone, is a dangerous situation.
So it's in the interest of the journalists?
I'm saying that a complete elimination of, or bringing the number to 0 in such a war zone is nearly impossible. However, there is only one television network that we have prevented or eliminated its activity. It's known as Al Jazeera.
Right? Yes.
Al Jazeera, by calling it media network, actually it's a bluff. It's a propaganda tool being financed by the government of Qatar, that its activity is forbidden not only in Israel, but also in Egypt, in Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, and many moderate Arab states. Only lately, we've discovered that 7 of the leading journalists at Al Jazeera were also on the payroll of Hamas.
You recently discovered that 7 journalists
I don't have it here,
on the
but
payroll
I can
of
send
Hamas.
you the file of 7 leading journalists that got salaries from both organizations. They were on the payroll of Al Jazeera, and they were on the payroll of Hamas. Now, unlike other people, I speak Arabic and I watch Al Jazeera often.
Right. You feel like the coverage is skewed?
I feel that calling Al Jazeera a reliable media network is a huge bluff. There is no reliability, no credibility in their coverage. What you have is merely propaganda.
Oh, really?
And again, everybody's talking about Israel closing. It took us a very long time to close the office. Egypt did it way before.
Right.
Jordan did it way before. Saudi Arabia did it way before. And it's well-known fact in the world that they are being financed by the Qatari government.
Which
and
makes them a threat to Israel.
In so many words, you can say that this is the Ministry of Information of the Qatari government.
Al Jazeera is the Ministry of Information.
Al Jazeera is on the payroll of the Ministry of Information of the government of Qatar.
Now, yes, Israel has lost lives, right, throughout this war, but the civilian death toll in Gaza and now Lebanon is huge, right? It's a lot higher than the numbers that Israel has lost. There have been over 42,718 Palestinians which have lost their lives. And I'm intentionally clearly stating these figures just so our viewers recognize the gravity of this as well. There have been over 60% of these have been identified as women or children or elderly individuals which one would assume do not have a direct threat on Israel. Now, This translates to approximately 34,344 confirmed Palestinian casualties, with 7,797 being minors. These are staggering figures. And you say that Israel is going to continue to go hard at this until the goal is met, is realized.
No, I didn't say that Israel is going to go hard against the civil population. What I'm saying is indeed you see?
Oh, okay.
That's okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I have discovered intelligence information in Gaza confirming that 6 journalists are members of Hamas and PIJ.
Right.
PIJ stands for Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
Right.
Those are the names. Sorry, 6, not 7, but this is the information I was talking about. So this is Jazeera.
This is constant information provided by the Israel War Room, as
Indeed,
we see.
but it is based information. We have the files.
Verified information.
We wouldn't release it unless we knew for sure that those are. Thank you very much for your editors for providing this information. So first, I don't know if the numbers that you just mentioned are reliable.
These are the recent statistics that I have.
It is leaning on numbers that have been published by the Hamas Ministry of Health in Gaza. I do agree with you that the human price is huge. There's no doubt about it. And this goes back to what I said before, that when you conduct a war in an area which is the most congested in the world, 240 square kilometers, that hosts 2 million people, and you try to eliminate 40,000 terrorists that are, most of them, hiding in tunnels, unlike the population that have nowhere to hide, I think the international community has the right to say this is wrong, but I think they do not address it to the right address. They should address it to the Hamas leadership. They should address it to Mr. Sinwar, that
they should
address
the gravity and the lives that are being lost in Gaza,
Indeed.
not to Israel,
no,
but to
they
the
should
leadership
address
of Hamas.
it to the Hamas leaders, Yahya Sinwar that is not with us, Mohammed Def that is not with us anymore, and all the rest of them, that most of them, I'm happy to say, are not with us anymore. They took the population in Gaza for a ride. They held them as human shields. And the bigger the number of casualties were, made the Hamas leadership only happier, because they knew that the pressure on Israel is going to be bigger and is going to be more significant. We said from the beginning, Hamas should lay its weapons and should leave Gaza immediately. If this is not going to happen, we are going to come after you. This never happened. It never happened because Hamas activists knew that they have a shelter, they are underground, and they have cover.
Right.
They don't mind about the civil population in Gaza. And indeed, after Israel eliminated Yahya Sinwar, that took us too long. I hoped we would do it earlier. But the day we eliminated Yahya Sinwar, in Gaza, there were so many Palestinian people that said, at long last,
the people in Gaza who were
by all
glad,
means, not all of them, that has to be said. Hamas still enjoys some popular support in Gaza.
And this new leader has said it's going to carry
By
on.
all means, just like in Lebanon, many Lebanese were very happy the day we eliminated Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. So those two terror organizations, Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, hijacked. They simply they hijacked a sovereign population or a sovereign administration in the case of Lebanon. And those two entities, or Gaza and the state of Lebanon, have been taken hostage by terrorists. And since the world didn't do anything about it, eventually we did something about it.
How about those who say that this is a genocide? I mean, in effect, what we are seeing is a genocide before our eyes.
So, you know, Natalie, I'm willing to argue or to address some arguments, but this argument that this is a genocide is so ridiculous, is so unbased, is such a propaganda. Genocide is what happened to the Jews in Germany between 42 and 45. Genocide is what happened in Rwanda. Genocide is what happened to the Armenians by the Turks. What happened now is a war. War is a dirty thing. We don't like to be engaged in a war, but we were forced with our back against the wall. There is nothing in what happened that answers to the definition of genocide.
Why does it appear that the international community is unable to check Benjamin Netanyahu? It appears the international community is unable to stop him, check him. For Israel to follow, laid out, be it UN or legal framework as it pertains to this law, it appears that Netanyahu cannot be checked.
What do you mean cannot be checked?
Cannot be checked in terms of the gravity at which this war is going. I mean, let's face it, typically if this was another state, say we would have even the United States, certain global powers addressing this war very differently from how it appears they're addressing it, from how it appears it's being addressed. Do you agree that it appears that Israel is being permitted to operate at a scale that is not being checked as it typically would have?
Okay, so those are two different things, because the first question addressed specifically Mr. Netanyahu, and the second one addressed the state of Israel. So let me first answer the first question, then the second. Israel is a democracy. It is the only democracy in the Middle East. Actually, I'm following now what's happening in your parliament. Something very similar happens in Israel, not now, for a whole year before the war. And this is the tension between the judicial authority and the legislative authority. Exactly the same thing that I'm watching the television, I say, that's exactly what we have in Israel. But Israel, just like Ghana, you're having your elections on the 7th of December. Israel is a solid, strong democracy. And Mr. Netanyahu won the election, the last elections. In the day after, we'll have another campaign, another elections, and we'll have to see who's winning. So if you, I would say, challenge Israel, you shouldn't challenge only the leader, because he didn't just hijack the leadership in Israel. He was elected by the Israeli people, and in that sense, Israel is as democratic as Ghana, not more and not less. As for the second question, does the international community permit Israel more than it permits other states? I think the answer goes back to what I told you before, Natalie. Israel is in a unique situation. Israel is facing challenges, geopolitical challenges, like no other state in the world. I think the United States is aware of it. We didn't speak about Iran yet, that attacked Israel twice, on the 14th of April and then on the 1st of October. And actually, Israel is like, I would say, a wall that is facing this axis of evil coming from Iran. Israel is like a dam. That's what I meant. Like that is facing this flow of terrorism that starts in Iran and being assisted by Hezbollah in the north, by the Houthis in Yemen, by Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. And actually, Israel, I think many Western countries are aware that Israel is a dam that is facing this flow of terrorism. And if Israel will, God forbid, collapse, this flow of terrorism this flow of terror will continue and will swap many other countries in the West. So currently, I think, luckily, Israel is the strongest state in the Middle East, much stronger than all the rest of the states, with all the problems that we are facing. And much of it is due to the support we are getting from the United States and other Western countries. This is true, but I think they have a very good reason to support Israel.
So you're defending it, basically, have a good reason to support
in a way,
the manner in which
we are a fortress of many Western countries facing these dangers that is coming from Iran.
So in some, that sort of does say that Israel is being permitted to operate at.
I think
it's not being fully checked.
It's not that we can do whatever we want.
But there's good reason, is what you're simply saying.
I'm saying that it's not that we can do whatever we want. We've been forced to play in a very dirty game. We didn't choose this game. But once this war was enforced on us, we know how to fight. And we fight for our freedom and for our stability and for our future as a sovereign state in the Middle East. And we intend to win.
Now, in rounding up, how do you foresee that this war is going to impact Israel's relations, be it globally, internationally, in Africa, with Ghana, the countries in which you serve, in the years to come?
So, as for Africa, we do see some erosion with some states since the beginning of the war. I will not mention it here. I believe that in Ghana, our relationship with Ghana are solid, are strong. I hope this interview helped to make our position more clear. And I do believe that the relationship with Ghana will remain solid and strong also in the day after. There will be some states that we will need to amend our relationship with in the day after. But again, I believe that when the dust will settle, and it will settle hopefully soon, people will understand better the challenges that Israel faced, and hence our status or our position in the world will return to what it was on the 6th of October 23, one day before the massacre.
Now, in less than 2 minutes, I just want to pick your thoughts on some local issues. Yes, you just highlighted the tension between the judiciary and the legislature. What are your thoughts on that current happening as it pertains to Ghana's parliament?
I'm happy that you don't ask me who do I support here in the elections.
No, we are going to get to
don't
the elections.
Don't worry.
I was going to ask you that
diplomat,
specifically, but carry on.
Look, Natalie, one thing I learned in my 35 years of experience, diplomats should not be judgmental. And this is my sixth overseas mission, and I do not intend to become judgmental now. However, as I told you, I think what's happening here in between the parliament and judiciary and the Supreme Court is fascinating. I don't know if people here are aware, but Israel is facing exactly the same conflict, one-on-one. Actually, now because of the war, it's been it's not as dramatic as it was before, but for a whole year before the war, this is exactly this conflict between the three actually authorities: the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. We had it in Israel. In Israel, it's not over yet. What I can wish this country to have a very peaceful elections on the 7th of December that will produce a very stable and strong government to lead this wonderful country, this wonderful state in the very many challenges that are waiting for you down the road.
His Excellency Roey Gilad, thank you very much for speaking with GHOne TV.
And thank you for hosting me.
Pleasure.